Dr. Mustafa Mahmoud posits that humans often mistake labeling for understanding. We process the universe through a semantic filter, a set of predefined categories that obscures the actual mechanics of existence. This is a failure of epistemology, the branch of philosophy concerning the nature of knowledge. Take a plant like the Venus flytrap. When an insect touches the microscopic hairs, the plant snaps shut in a fraction of a second. This movement requires complex hydraulic triggers. To change the curvature of its leaves, the plant floods its cells with water, executing a calculated trap without a brain or a central nervous system. We see similar mathematical precision in the hexagonal grid of a honeycomb. This structure serves a designed purpose, maximizing storage while minimizing wax usage. When confronted with this engineering, the modern intellect applies a label like nature or instinct. Mahmoud argues that these labels merely name the observation without explaining the origin of the design. They describe what is happening, but they do not account for how the complex data required for such architecture entered the organism. Relying on these terms is a mental shortcut, or a heuristic. It functions as a blindfold, allowing the observer to ignore the conscious, managing architect behind the engineering. In his book, I Saw God, Mahmoud provides a framework for removing this blindfold. Mahmoud presents a rigorous epistemological argument against the secular scientific terminology that limits our perception. Materialistic labels act as a barrier to true perception. Using words like nature and instinct obscures the underlying logic of biological organisms. This vocabulary forces the mind into a framework where every biological marvel is viewed as the result of a random, unguided causal chain. Mahmoud proposes a divine implantation model instead. In this view, behavior is a direct manifestation of a higher will programmed into the material world. We will examine Mahmoud's methodology for looking past this semantic veil to observe the logic of reality. This requires viewing the universe as a deliberate data stream waiting for a mind capable of processing its depth. Mahmoud points to anomalies that shatter the concept of biological instinct to show that the universe operates on a deeper algorithm than mere survival. He highlights the documented case of the circus lion Sultan and his trainer, Muhammad al-Halal. After attacking his trainer, the lion began a period of deep depression and refused to eat. The text describes his ultimate self-mutilation and death as signs of remorse. This behavior creates a biological paradox. If a predator is governed purely by a survival mechanism, the concept of a beast committing suicide out of moral guilt becomes inexplicable. Mahmoud contrasts this with modern humans, who often possess the intellect to kill millions with bureaucratic efficiency while feeling no remorse. This event represents a rupture in the standard secular model. It is an instance where a non-physical burden, guilt, overrides the strongest biological drive of self-preservation. Mahmoud uses this anomaly to argue that even beasts are connected to a hidden moral framework that supersedes raw evolutionary programming. Events like Sultan's remorse suggest that the physical world is governed by a deeper moral architecture rather than blind biological imperatives. Mahmoud applies this same logic to human events, arguing that tragedy and chaos possess an underlying order. He utilizes the Quranic story of Moses and Al-Khidr as an interpretive paradigm. We can view this as a systemic framework for interpreting the apparent chaos of reality. On the surface, the story describes Al-Khidr vandalizing a ship belonging to poor workers, an act that appears to be a random tragedy. The hidden layer reveals that the vandalism was a precise intervention. By damaging the vessel, Al-Khidr prevented a future tyrant from confiscating it, ultimately protecting the workers. This paradigm functions like a ledger. The left column represents the apparent event, the physical hardship we observe. The right column holds the hidden reality, the structural resolution. When we link the surface action to the long-term resolution, the actual logic of the event is revealed. Mahmoud argues that all universal events follow this dual-layer structure. What the human eye perceives as random tragedy is simply an incomplete reading of the event. Apparent chaos is frequently a manifestation of a benevolent algorithm that our limited perspective cannot fully process. If the underlying algorithm of the universe is benevolent, why is it hidden behind a layer of pain and material illusion? Mahmoud addresses this in a chapter titled The Test. He identifies testing as the structural purpose of the entire universe. The text explains that worldly lusts and physical constraints are not accidental flaws. They are the deliberately designed parameters of an exam. The material world generates friction, intentionally challenging the observer's ability to see past immediate physical input. This veil of logic and tragedy is a required testing ground. It forces consciousness to either focus on the surface or recognize the underlying intent. If reality is a hidden test, we must examine the tool we use to solve it, the intellect, or al-aq. The intellect is a powerful computational tool, adapted for navigating the physical world and measuring causality. Within its parameters, the mind operates like a mechanical grid, efficiently sorting and processing finite data. But when faced with an infinite reality, the gears of the intellect grind to a halt. The rigid grid of logical categories cannot process the infinite. Mahmoud concludes that because the intellect relies on boundaries and definitions, it is the wrong hardware for comprehending the singular reality of God. This level of perception requires the heart, the al-qalb or al-basira. This faculty is designed for mushahada, the direct, unmediated vision of spiritual truths. While the intellect measures the material world, only the heart possesses the faculty for direct apprehension of the absolute truth. There is one final barrier that prevents the heart from engaging its perceptive capabilities. Mahmoud identifies this barrier as the ego, or the I. He views the independent self as a deceptive illusion. Realizing one's own non-existence in the face of the absolute is the only way to lift the final veil. The word I implies an existence independent of the Creator. This contradicts the concept of an infinite God who encompasses all of reality. Seeing past the material world requires surrendering the arrogance of the intellect and accepting the total dissolution of the ego. When this final layer of selfhood is removed, the artificial boundaries of the material world fall away, and perception finally becomes clear. Mahmoud's model presents the universe as a deliberate text. Every physical event is a word pointing directly to the author. Human existence reaches its culmination when the heart perceives the hand of the Creator moving the material world.